We got Ryan Berckmans in the house. Ryan, welcome. I first of all want to give a shout out to Leap because I had never heard of you before. And I hopped into one of his spaces you were on, and I just felt like you were cooking. And it might have been one of the best spaces I've been on all year, if not the best. So again, shout out to Leap. I went back and listened to the recording so that I could formulate some of these questions. And one of the things that I like to do, which early on in my interviewing career I had a hard time with, was balancing between explaining concepts to the layman versus also not asking super basic questions, because I think it's important for the average listener to be able to understand not just how this technology solves problems, but the different components. And there was a part where you and Mert were getting super technical, and so much of that was going over my head, but we can get into that as well. Before we get started, I think it's important for the audience to get a quick background into who you are, how you started your crypto journey, what you were doing before that, and then we'll subsequently dive into all the meat.
Noah, thanks, man, for having me on the show. Great space with Leap. Really enjoyed it. I was actually about 4 or 5 beers deep by the end, so it was midnight in Cayman Islands. So it was, I think, good time to call it a night. So yeah, I mean, great to be here. I think it's also important to balance accessibility of this new technology with getting enough in the weeds that it's giving an accurate picture and not just sort of putting some glazing over what's actually going on. In terms of my background, I grew up through computer science, went to Waterloo. That's a school Vitalik dropped out of in Canada. And went to America for about 10 years, just for corporate America. I worked at Amazon. And then I had an important role in a fintech where we loaned money to people at point of checkout, the buy now, pay later industry. I didn't work at a firm. That's the big famous one by the PayPal guy, Max Levchin. I worked at an Affirm competitor. It ended up selling for $450 million after I left. Team did a fantastic job. And I didn't participate largely in that exit, but it was a really great role. And my sort of Ethereum crew now, like 4 or 5 of us, over half of them are from this company. So that's really how I got started. And from an investment standpoint, I've been just dumping all my money into mostly Ether since Q1 2017. So had a little bit of I didn't participate at all in 2018 bull run. I wrote it up and I wrote it back down. Had a lot to learn about investing in crypto, and then in 21 I made, like, for my family, big money. Moved to Cayman Islands, bought a house, and I haven't had a full-time job in 5 years, and I just kind of work on Ethereum. I do some payments building, I do some writing, and just trying to connect with folks and let them know Ethereum's doing quite well. Actually, don't believe them.
What does that feel like? What does that feel like to make life-changing money and know at a young age that you never have to work again? Although you strike me as the kind of person that can't stop doing work or doing some sort of work, but I would love to know what goes on inside when something like that happens.
Yeah, no, it's funny. You love what you do. You never work a day in your life. Okay, but it's also nice to be your own boss and take breaks whenever you want, and work from home in a great home office. So I think part of it's just I love it, and part of it's that it's pretty convenient to work on your own terms. So, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
man, when we signed this house and took the keys, and it's a great big house, wonderfully built. We have a pool, big backyard, kind of like oceanside. I mean, it feels great, and I wish that success on everyone who's involved, because it's early days. It's going to be a great journey for all of us.
Right on. So let's dive into Ethereum. You said a lot of things on that space I've been on Leap spaces before. There are a lot of Solana maxis on there, and there are a lot of great things to be said about Solana. And I thought you did a good job of acknowledging some of those strengths that Solana has versus Ethereum. I don't want to make this whole interview about Solana versus Ethereum. We will kind of get there, but I want to dive into Ethereum first. I want to dive into this concept of decentralization being a spectrum. And I would love to know why you think that Ethereum is that much more decentralized than not just Solana, but every other smart contract compatible layer one.
Right. No. So decentralization, ultimately is about how many guns to how many heads. Like the blockchain community is proposing basically a new world order where we're going to put all the money and all the stuff and all the economic activity on chain. And when it's on chain, it can't be changed by anybody, even a really angry, really rich and powerful government who maybe entered into an agreement that they later wanted to back out of. Great example here is when America withdrew from the climate accords. Now, look, regardless of how you feel about that decision, the fact that they could withdraw unilaterally, that they could just say, hey, we're gonna dip out of this Paris agreement. We just feel like it. But 30 years from now, 50 years from now, it could be the case that when governments make big agreements with each other, there's actually skin in the game to those agreements where they can't back out without suffering a major economic loss on the chain. So imagine like if the US had to post some kind of bond or some kind of potential asset that could be forfeited if it was reported that they and reporting it reliably on chain. That's the Oracle problem. That's a whole nother can of worms. But you get into a world where the blockchain can hold corporations and governments and individuals accountable in a way that the banking system and kind of pre-digital just couldn't do. It was sort of against the laws of economic physics, but now we can. And so it's really this big change that there are certain economic realities, agreements, transfers, balances. There's stuff that happens on chain that nobody can change. And that's the idea of decentralization. And it's powerful, and it's going to create a lot of wealth and help a lot of especially poor people who are going to use the chain to build better lives for themselves. But it comes to this downside that now, if you're used to being the one in charge, you're like quite a bit less in charge now because the chain is the authority. And so that's why decentralization is important. That's why folks are sometimes like especially in government are frightened and object to it. And so when we look at Solana versus Ethereum versus Avalanche versus like your fork of Bitcoin that you start in your mom's basement, like the big difference here is how many guns, how many heads. And Ethereum has thought deeply about the problem of what if folks try to come after the chain in any way. Because that's the thing about security. That's the thing about trying to defend. If you have a nice home, you don't want a burglar to come in. You can put all this money in a big iron door with a big iron bar. Oops, you left the window open. My man just comes through the window. And that's really what blockchains are about. And so decentralization is about being able to make a promise that the chain's going to do what it says it does under any circumstance. And it's about being able to make that promise regardless of the threat vector, be it code related or North Korea or three-letter agencies or running out of funding or your developers going rogue. Doesn't matter what could go wrong. Chain's got to do what it says it's going to do. And Ethereum's done by far the most thinking and by far the best strategy and execution at that.
Okay. I want to dive in a bit more to, well, first of all, this sparked a question in my head. Do you think that the merge was the right decision, going from proof of work to proof of stake?
The merge? Oh, yes. The merge was the single most important event in Ethereum's history, besides just turning the lights on in the first place, as well as it's one of the most impressive feats of software engineering in history, like on par with making the rockets work in the 60s. Like the merge swapped the engine out while the plane was flying during a bull market when market cap of Ethereum passed 500 billion. And like this is a sorry, getting my years wrong. I've been here about
Yeah,
5-6 years now. Yeah, merge was a
2022.
year after the bull market.
Yeah.
And so like the merge was a major feat, and Vitalik has written well on this. He wrote about like why is security under proof of stake more efficient than proof of work, and what it really comes down to is a few things. It's two things. In mining, who pays for these big mining data centers you see on the news? Like you got the homie, he's like, yeah, I'm a Bitcoin miner. It's great being a Bitcoin miner. Small town miner here. He opens the door and it's like the Matrix movie, like football fields full of giant computers guzzling electricity with like, liquid cooling. Who pays for all that? The answer is Bitcoin holders. Mining has an expensive cost structure because miners are willing and able to compete for $1 in mining revenue. And they'll spend up to $1 to capture that dollar. So if you offer miners $1 million in Bitcoin rewards, they're willing to spend up to like, on average, 975,000, because they're trying to compete for this prize. Staking, totally different. You can't spend more money on the staking system to make more money. Yes, you can buy more ether. Yes, rich stakers get richer because they have higher principal, so they get higher interest. But all stakers get the same interest rate regardless of how much capital they have. If you own like $100 of Lido's liquid staking tokens, stETH, you're getting the same 3 point some odd rate that the ICO guy who has like institutional staking, with 300 million, you're getting the same rate. It's not true in mining. In mining, not only are the mining computers insanely expensive and BTC holders pay for that, it's also the case that you get these economies of scale where the large mining firms make significantly more profit because they have economies of scale. They can buy bulk hardware, get closer to the underlying cost. And then a big advantage in mining is having relationships with people who are making the state of the art mining hardware. When the mining hardware gets better and better, you can make an investment, and then this thing that was printing for you like last year, well, the next year it's like a paperweight because their technology is increasing. That phenomenon also doesn't happen in proof of stake. So Bitcoin holders don't generally believe this in my experience, but mining is just smacking them around year in, year out. These miners take home so much money. It's unbelievable. And not all of it's profit. Most of it's going to be cost. And so it's really the miner suppliers who are the beneficiaries here. And the second thing about proof of stake is that it's just secure. With proof of stake, you can credibly secure more economic activity than the value of your native token. So, for example, if you got a proof of stake chain like Ethereum, it's got $1 trillion of market cap. That'd be about Ether at 10,000. So we're thinking ahead. And let's say then BlackRock, which their first Ethereum product has ramped up, I think, to like maybe 500 million or more in several months of TVL. Great product. Well, let's say that continues ramping, and now we have 5 trillion in stable coins and BlackRock and tokenized real estate and all this great shit. Well, how do we secure that? How do we secure $5 trillion of stuff on 1 trillion of Ether market cap? Well, the answer is in proof of stake, it basically just works. You're just good. But in Bitcoin, if you got $5 trillion of stuff being secured by the Bitcoin system, you get all these attacks where it now becomes pretty profitable for people to try to do, to acquire hash power to cause issues with the chain. So, yeah, proof of stake is just an amazing decision for Ethereum.
So Ryan, let me just push back for a moment. I hear a lot of criticisms when it comes to proof of stake resulting in aggregation of Ethereum in centralized staking services like Lido or like Coinbase, and how that could potentially compromise the integrity of this trustless, immutable ecosystem.
Those critics are right. Look, there's a few things going on here. One, proof of stake is genuinely much more fucking complicated than mining. And so if the magic machine breaks, that's like really bad. So there needs to be that Lindy factor of like proving it out. And we're a few years in now. The before the merge, the proof of stake Ethereum. The reason they call it the merge is it actually merged two separate blockchains because there was a proof of stake chain that was doing nothing but working itself since 2020. So we're coming up on 4 years of the proof of stake chain running steadily. And as that track record increases, the complexity risk goes down. And when it comes to centralization risk, bottom line, Lido is a one trick pony. There, in my view, there will never again be an LST provider or an institutional staker or any kind of staking intermediary that accumulates anywhere close to Lido's 28 some odd percent of staked Ether today. Lido got started at a crucial time, and they developed crucial early network effects, but that was not the most important factor. The most important factor was that Lido's competitors were dog shit for about a year and a half or 2 years after Lido launched. They effectively had a monopoly because the competitors just didn't do a good job. So, people would say, oh, what can I use besides Lido? The answer was nothing. Like even Rocket Pool didn't launch for over a year after, and
Right.
Rocket Pool is highly regarded. I respect them, but they tied their staking to the speculative pump of their token. Terrible decision. They're now getting rid of that decision. And so this 28% that Lido has now, first of all, it's down, I think, from about 32%. So that's a pretty big drop, 32 to 28. That's about a 10% drop on a
Mhm.
relative basis. Lido is finally not as threatening as they were because their shares going down. We would rather see it go down to below 22%. Like a 21% is about the highest we want. Nobody is ever going to get that high ever again because there's just so many entrants and there's so much reason to try to run your own stakers. And if you have distribution, if you have access to a customer segment, like say, you are an institutional partner for high net worth individuals in Western Europe, just random example, like those folks are going to go to you and they're going to say, hey, we're interested in Ethereum. And you're going to say, oh, okay, well, why don't you stake your Ethereum with me? And they're going to say, okay, we trust you. Let's do that. And so you get this natural fragmentation of staking providers. It's not a winner take all market. Lido for a long time argued that it would be a winner take all. It was never a good argument, and it's not proving out over time. So yeah, the centralization risks of staking are real. Fuck Lido for trying to run all staking in the world, which was actually their goal. They actually wanted to do that. Uh, and thanks Lido for never getting hacked. We really appreciate that. And so yeah, I think the future is pretty bright for staking centralization. Easing off.
Brilliant. So before we dive into L2 scaling, there is another question I wanted to ask, and I promised we would get to the Sol versus Ethereum debate later on in the conversation, but I do think it's important. And you talked about decentralization as a spectrum and the importance of it, but just simply because Solana is the only L1 that's remotely competing or close to competing with Ethereum as an L1, I would love for you to, one, you said on the space, decentralization is a holistic brand inclusive, or sorry, you said holistic brand inclusive measure of decentralization. You also referred to Balaji's definition of the Nakamoto coefficient and how that ties in. You've mentioned the how many guns to how many heads, but can you just explain why you believe, from a technological basis, that Ethereum's network is, let me rephrase it. How much more decentralized do you think that Ethereum's network is than Solana, and why?
It's tough to put a number on it because it's sort of like a building collapsing. It's a perfect building until the day it collapses, and you can look at the flaws and the cracks, and even the building's not a good analogy because you can get a pretty solid mathematical model of why a building's going to collapse. But for decentralization, it's the realm of realpolitik. Like let's say tomorrow the CIA or the Fed or the European Central Bank decided to go totally medieval on Ethereum, maybe even illegally. What can they do? And when you really look at Solana versus Ethereum, the full range of factors, Solana is really much more attackable and much less of a solid foundation for very serious builders that want to do very serious activity with large amounts of money on chain. And
Why?
so okay, so the gold standard issue here, which is not the only issue, is client diversity. A problem that Bitcoin has had is that the people who happen to have commit access to the Bitcoin core code base, which is the kind of code base that a lot of the mining pools are slurping up and using automatically, often with maybe automatic updates, or they review the change log and they hit OK. This Bitcoin core code base has how many folks contributing to it? 6? I don't know. I'd have to look it up. Could be 3, could be 12. I don't know. But these people have a lot of power. in a way, they are the de facto arbiters of what the Bitcoin protocol is, because this Bitcoin core program is so dominant that the single program is the protocol. So you can make like a PDF. You can get an academic that makes a PDF that says, "Oh, hey, here, this 12-page PDF is the Bitcoin protocol. It is the essence of Bitcoin distilled to equations." But the problem is, if the Bitcoin core developers are like, I'm going to change that 1 to a 2, like, how do you know that doesn't actually get pushed out and become Bitcoin? And so this is why Ethereum pursued client diversity. And by the way, they might not want to change that 1 to a 2. Their GitHub developer account might get hacked. They might, have someone come to their home with weapons and threaten them. There's all kinds of things that could happen that could make that single code base be a point of failure in terms of change management. Because when it comes to the program integrity, the code side of decentralization, it's not necessarily that you're trying to solve for bugs like in the live code. It's the change management story. How do you stop things like zeroing out someone's balance in the next fork? How do you stop that? And so Ethereum's answer to that was this thing called client diversity. And client diversity has two parts. The first part is that Ethereum is a PDF, is like an essay. Like, what Ethereum actually is a bunch of extremely smart researchers wrote an essay saying this is what Ethereum is. And then a bunch of other researchers studied that and published and critiqued it and figured out how it could break or be stressed. And then when they were really, really happy with the essay, they took the essay and they gave copies of it to 5 different software teams that write in different languages, and they're in different countries. They have different management and ownership structures, and the EF owns like none of them. That might not be true for Geth alone. I'm not sure, but like the EF doesn't own these, and so you have these 5 separate teams that have taken the essay protocol spec that is Ethereum that the researchers vetted, and they translate it into code, and then they share things like test suites and developer preview test nets. And so the result is that as long as real world adoption of these 5 clients is balanced, then no one client, even no 2 clients, can go rogue and cause someone's balance to get zeroed out, or some other kind of hostile change. And there's lots of different kinds of hostile changes. It's not just theft. It could even be very technical things that seem like a good idea at the time, but then it turns out there's like some fatal flaw that 3 years down the line, Ethereum falls over. And so client diversity is about separating the specification of Ethereum from the code that runs Ethereum. And then it's about making sure that the spec has like lots of researchers on it, and the code has lots of different programs with independent stakeholders, people who can tell each other to go F off, and there's literally no, connection there that they can be coerced. Uh, and having multiple programs is also just like, if one program shits the bed, which has happened, the other programs just pick up the slack invisibly, because that client stops working, and 15% of the network stops doing its job to operate Ethereum, and that 15% is not enough to cause an outage, and certainly not enough to cause like a theft or a capture of Ethereum. And so when you look at Ethereum's client diversity story, which took years, like 5 or 6 years to design this thing, make the protocol spec, researchers bang it out. And then we had to convince everybody to adopt the long tail clients. Like, for a long time, we had 5 working programs, but one of them had like 85% market share. Finally, only as of this year, do we have no Ethereum program that has a super majority 2/3 share, which is like nuclear apocalypse if the worst case bug happens for Ethereum. So this client diversity thing is not only really valuable, it's also really hard to set up. You can't buy it. You have to grow it. There's no way to buy it at maturity. And so, all right, what's Solana doing on that? Not too much. So they have a Rust program, which is their main program. They have no real protocol spec. They're currently in the process of trying to build one, trying to write one down. So there's no essay that describes what Solana is. The essay of what Solana is embedded in the guts and little details of the Solana Rust client. So if you want to know like how does Solana behave in this certain situation? You got to go into the Rust code base. You got to go to like whatever file, line 374. You got to start reading the code and figure out what's the design here. Whereas in Ethereum, you have this PDF spec. So now Solana's working on all these other clients, like FireDancer notably. But FireDancer development has been difficult because the guys building it have to actually go look at the Rust client to figure out how Solana even works. And that's why they have now FrankenDancer, which is FireDancer for some parts and Rust client for the others. So, you can find some marketing material where Solana will claim to have up to like 5 clients. That's not true. They have one client. There's only a single independent Solana program that can run the network, and it has no corresponding research protocol that's been like rigorously analyzed by researchers and is accepted by the community as the gold standard. Because even once you have that protocol PDF spec, you can just write it and stick it in a drawer and never look at it again. You need to have a culture that like the PDF protocol spec is the root source of truth. So that if like a homie in a program changes some shit and it doesn't agree with the PDF, everyone has to be like, nah, man, that's not going to work. Ethereum has had that for years. It's going to take Solana years even to get there with 2 clients. They just don't have client diversity. That's
So,
only
so,
one example.
so you don't think that FireDancer is a sufficient long-term solution for what Solana is trying to achieve?
Absolutely not. FireDancer has material issues even in the optimistic scenario, and they've published some material against this, and their material is pretty good. But I just think it describes the problem more than describes the solution. FireDancer famously is these low-level hand-coded C modules. Do you know why Ethereum programs aren't written in that shit? Because it's really hard to secure. That low-level stuff is where you get all the classic gnarly bugs from the 90s, where like whole networks went down in minutes because the when the reason they invented Rust was to wholesale prevent certain classes of worst case computer bugs, where like there was just a problem. We didn't code it wrong per se. It does what it's supposed to do, but there was a little tiny hole, a microscopic hole in the wall, and no one could tell. The Rust language was designed to prevent that. So are other high level programming languages that Ethereum's written in, like Java and Go. And so when you come in and you say, hey, we're going to rewrite Solana in low level hand coded C modules, well, great. You've created a significantly structurally less secure system that like only 12 graybeards in their late 50s can code against because nobody even is trained to write this shit anymore. They're all moving on to more advanced languages specifically for this reason. And so that's FireDancer's security profile once it already works. Oh, and by the way, the TPS boost they want to get from FireDancer, you can't have a TPS boost if you also want client diversity. Because FireDancer's going at 250 miles an hour, the Rust client's going at 100 miles an hour. These guys cannot sync a chain. You either have to choose between having 2 independent clients that both move at the speed of the slowest, which is 100 miles an hour, or you can have FireDancer as a primary client, and when it shits the bed, you can have your 100-mile-an-hour client, acting as a fallback. But that's not a perfect system because it's moving so fast it shits the bed. What if it shits the bed in a really bad way? It's just like FireDancer is not going to save Solana client diversity. No, not even close. As well as I think it's going to take quite a long time to build because Solana is a beautiful, complicated piece of software. And as anyone who's ever tried to translate a material program between languages, it's not just like plug it into Google and call it a day. So especially if you're trying to make it like 10x faster, or whatever their goal is with the low level hand coded C modules. So no, I mean I'm bearish as hell on FireDancer. I would actually think it's much safer for Solana holders to stick with the Rust client forever and not even rely on FireDancer. Just my 2 cents.
We'll circle back to Solana, and we'll talk about some of the things you're doing really well. I think you were vocal about those aspects of not just the community, but the tech and the ecosystem. I want to talk about decentralization being incompatible with execution scaling. And I have a pretty general idea of why you can't have decentralization and security and speed all at the same time. You have the blockchain trilemma, but would love to hear in your words why it's just not possible with an L1 like Ethereum. And then we're going to dive into why you believe with conviction, it seems that the L2 approach is the right way to go.
Right. So Noah, where does Solana get its speed from today? at a high level, Solana gets a speed from why isn't Ethereum already that fast? At a high level, it's a few reasons. One, Solana has only the Rust client, lacking diversity, and Rust is a very fast language compared to many others, especially like, for example, Golang, which there's a major Ethereum client written in Go. So it gets speed from Rust. It gets speed from full stack technical optimizations that are difficult to put into a protocol. They can kind of just be coded in a program, but are difficult to raise up to the level of theory. Solana gets speed also from parallelization. Very famously, they run Solana through graphics cards. Great system. Many Ethereum clients are working on that now, including one in production, and I think one in testnet. And so, where else does Solana get speed from? It gets it from uh, not Merkleizing the state root every block. So now we're like getting out of, for example, my technical depth. Like the reasons for the trilemma are very technical, but if you look at the work that Ethereum does, block over block to guarantee the integrity, Solana does some of it like every so often instead of every block, just as one example. And so the researchers who built Ethereum, who tried to study every facet of the decentralization, how many guns to how many heads problem, they just determined that in order to satisfy their non negotiable goals of client diversity and certain kinds of like apocalypse attacks. Like, imagine the internet was severed in half. Imagine there was some major global war and literally the internet was split so that you can still use your web browser. But if you're in the West, you can only use Western sites. In the East, you can only use Eastern sites. It's literally disconnected. There's two separate internets now. Ethereum's actually designed to survive such an event. And when the internets are eventually rejoined, if they're eventually rejoined, Ethereum, the two parts of Ethereum that were running independently will actually like come together and figure their shit out, which is incredible. And so it's just the folks who made Ethereum what it is today determined that they could not meaningfully increase execution scaling without compromising on the decentralization goals. That was like their expert opinion. And that's why they chose the L2 model. And eventually, the L2 model and the strategy of having the so-called Ethereum blobs. These are the little data. They call them blobs because they're just like buckets. Little pouches of data. Eventually, that will scale Ethereum quite hard, but it'll scale it asynchronously in the sense that you have these L2s that can buy these blobs, but Solana benefits from having synchronous atomic composability across the whole system, where any programmer account on Solana can compose with any other in a single transaction, which is not true across the L2 ecosystem. But a lot of folks, myself included, think that global synchronous atomic composability is overrated. It's like literally not how the world works. Like, we're having this conversation, there's someone else having conversations elsewhere. Why do we need to have like instant connectivity between any 2 points at all the time? It's not valuable in the real world. In the general case, is what we think. And so that really explains why Ethereum took this approach, that ultimately the gigabrains didn't want to give up the insanely high level of decentralization on Ethereum that's designed to last like decades, centuries, any eventuality they could think of.
Okay, so the L2 model is what they believe to be the right approach. I think it's undoubtable that the EVM has a strong first mover advantage, and so now we have Arbitrum, we have Base, we have Optimism, Polygon, which I believe is technically a sidechain, Starkware, Immutable, Metis. You have all these layer twos, and as a result, you have all this, what many argue is a problem in fragmented liquidity. I would love to take a step back, right? Can you give us a high level overview of how a layer two works? I know we have optimistic rollups and ZK rollups, but from a high level, how do they work? And I want to go into fraud proofs and sequencers as well.
Great. So Noah, an L2 is an independent blockchain whose consensus that makes a blockchain in terms of being able to make a commitment and having that block over block where the history never changes. The layer 2 blockchain's consensus is coded to defer and obey to the layer one's view of the layer two's progress. So the layer two is a blockchain that chugs along and does its work, and it takes little summaries of its work called like validity proofs or state roots backed by the fraud proofs, and it sends them to the Ethereum L1, and it's like, Ethereum, here's what I'm doing, how am I doing? And then if Ethereum comes back and says, that's not right, you did something that's not correct, the layer two must roll back its state and obey Ethereum. And it's really that kind of parent-child, like master-servant relationship that drives the layer two model. And so, like, sometimes you'll hear Anatoly say stuff like, "Oh, Solana could just post all its data to Ethereum and become an Ethereum L2." And most specifically, your chain's not an L2 unless it's coded to roll back if Ethereum says it has to roll back. That's kind of the key thing. And then kind of the part two of the key thing is that the Ethereum layer one has to be able to prove that your layer two chain is executing properly. And right now we have two ways of doing this. One was kind of the initial way, and the other is kind of the better future way. The initial way for the layer two to prove to the layer one that it's working properly is to have the so-called fraud proof. The way a fraud proof works is that you take all the data for your layer two transactions and you compress it and you put it into blobs on the L1. You can even put it somewhere else. For fraud proofs, some people consider it a layer two. It's called an optimium. It's kind of like a really fancy side chain in a way, where if you have fraud proofs plus data that's not on the L1. But for something like Base, like the whole OP stack family, Arbitrum, these are optimistic rollups. And the reason they're called optimistic is they report to the layer one what they've been up to in terms of the final answer of that next called the state root, which is like the hash of the latest state of the whole layer two chain. And then they provide the supporting evidence, the transaction data, and then that's it. They don't provide anything else. They don't prove that they were valid. Instead, it's it's the job of third-party observers who can be, for the best of them, anybody. And they can just say, "Oh, wait, I detected fraud." And that's when they send the fraud proof, where they're able to take that transaction data that was provided, that evidence, and they make a little proof using their own program on their own laptop. They submit that proof to the L1, and then they can force the optimistic rollup to roll back to the valid state, or assume the true valid state based on that proof. And so that's how the today's, most of today's layer twos work. That they have this optimistic rollup fraud proof model. And it was a great way to get started. And there's some fantastic technology underpinning it. Recently this week, Arbitrum launched the ability. Now they can do fraud proofs over WebAssembly, which, like, lots of programming languages compile to WebAssembly, including Rust. So like, people are really cooking with fraud proofs. But I also think that everybody, including the fraud proof teams themselves, acknowledge that where things are really headed is the so-called zero knowledge validity proofs. Zero knowledge proofs are like a mathematical result from God. Like in the 70s ish, there were these mathematicians that came up with this idea of public key cryptography. It might have been a little earlier in the 70s. It was after World War II, which is why you hear about all these code breaking stories in World War II. These guys realized that for you and me and 10 other people to talk, we don't have to have a password between each of us. Like 10 of us, 10, that's like 45 passwords between us or whatever. That's too many passwords. We certainly can't scale the world with one password per pair of people. So instead, these mathematician homies invented this public key cryptography. Public key is like an email address. If you have my public key email address, you can send me an encrypted message and only I can decrypt it. So for 1 billion people to communicate privately, such as for online banking, e-commerce, Amazon, WhatsApp, you no longer need 1 billion times 1 billion is like 1 billion passwords. Because of these RSA guys, now you only need 1 billion. You need one per person. That's a scalable model. And so this mathematical construct revolutionized cryptography, revolutionized ultimately the internet, and that's what powers our online banking today. Anytime you see that encryption little lock on your browser or in WhatsApp, you're using that math these guys invented. So zero knowledge proofs, same scope of innovation. 30 years ago, people invented this idea that it turns out that for any given program that you run, you can, when you run it, you can keep detailed track of the steps of the program. Like normally when you run a program, it just tells you the final answer. But if you keep track of the detailed steps, it's called a trace. Then you can use the trace with some really hardcore math to produce a really, really tiny proof, which is like some math that like fits on like a business card. And that math can prove that an arbitrarily large computation was correct, which is like it sounds like science fiction. Like imagine I asked you to go off and do a process with 1,000,000 steps, and you're multiplying numbers and you're doing all this shit, and then it turns out that you can just be like, bam, here's a proof as long as my thumb that all this work I spent weeks doing is correct. This was like not possible before these guys invented this, but blockchains gave a business case to scale up zero knowledge proofs. So like 10 years ago, you couldn't use zero knowledge proofs for anything. They were too inefficient. It was just like some pie in the sky, pure math stuff. But then folks like Starkware realized, in Ethereum L2, they realized that, we can make these way, way better. And so now you have these validity zero knowledge proofs. And so you have these L2 chains that can basically go on their merry way, and they submit these proofs to the layer one. And the incredible thing about these proofs, and one of the key elements of Ethereum's strategy, is that, and this sounds like an impossible, insane result, but you can take two zero knowledge proofs, and you can smush them together so that you get a third proof that does the job of the first two. Like you can basically like smush them together. And here's the crazy part. There's like an unbelievable result. The new third proof is the same size as the first two. So you can take like computation, you can take like execution, like a bunch of people play 1,000,000 hours of a video game, and it's getting proved. It's like an on-chain game. And then you take $1 trillion of trading and you get some proofs from that. And then you take those proofs and you glue them together, and you end up with one little tiny final proof that represents like trillions in trading and millions of hours of video gaming. But the proof is still as big as it fits on a business card. It's an insane mathematical result. It's unbelievable this is possible in the world, but it is. And then you take that little tiny proof, and what do you do with it? Obviously, you settle it on Ethereum. And that's kind of the intuition of why Ethereum being decentralized is useful, because these layer twos are scaling with these zero knowledge proofs, and the zero knowledge proofs are like French fries and Coca-Cola. It's like Ethereum gives you the tiny amount of block space, super decentralized. And what do zero knowledge proofs need? They need a tiny amount of space, super reliable. So it's a match made in heaven. And that helps explain like how the layer twos scale with these proofs and why they settle on Ethereum.
From an end user perspective, I really love layer twos, particularly Arbitrum, because any DeFi application that I can find on Ethereum, I can more or less find on Arb, and the fees are pennies on the dollar. So this has allowed me to not be so hesitant when I want to jump into a token, or not be so hesitant when I want to change my Aave position. I think that a lot of what layer twos have done have been great for the end user that already knows how to interface with this stuff. One of the questions I have is, we've talked about what the advantages are, and you've really dived into the technicals. What are some pain points? What are some vulnerabilities and security risks? Because at the end of the day, I'll speak for myself. What lured me into this technology in late 2017 was the promise of Bitcoin. And then as I started to learn more about Ethereum, and as the decentralized applications started to be built on Ethereum, the idea that I have these financial tools that were at one point not available to an average person like me, but also that I can secure my assets and no one can take them, and no one can censor them, and no one can steal them, and I can move across space and time without having them confiscated from me from whatever reason. That's amazing. And I hear this argument a lot where layer twos are very centralized. I heard Jack on Leap Space, and Jack's a smart guy. He's been on our spaces before. The problem is when someone is really technical and I'm not, they can say things and sometimes they're not true. Like he talked about pouring coffee on one of Arbitrum's servers and the whole thing goes down. And you push back on that. You said it's actually not the case. But let's talk about the vulnerabilities, security risks of of layer twos. And then what are layer twos doing, right? What are the different stages of layer twos in order to move away from those risks?
Absolutely. So Ethereum community takes layer 2 risks very seriously. We take it so seriously that the gigabrains who support the layer 2 kind of model generally have come up with like a whole Wall Street grade risk framework with like different factors. And that very complicated risk framework is live at the L2beat.com. That's L2beat, beat as in like Beats by Dre.com. But we're actually just later today launching a simplified version of that site called L2safety.info. That's L2safety.info. And basically, it's just like a bunch of red light, green light kind of showing you what can happen. It still requires some interpretation or knowledge in terms of like, okay, if the thing's a red light and it goes bad, what's the impact? But bottom line is that for a mature, a middle maturity, like a teenage, a kind of metaphorically a teenage L2 like Arbitrum, it's super secure compared to a shit alt L1 because the weak point is the security committee. And what the security committee does is they are responsible for disaster response. And first of all, there's never been any major Arbitrum disasters to my knowledge, but they're ready for them. And of course, the problem with the disaster is what if the disaster is fake and it's really trying to like rug Arbitrum and steal the billions in locked TVL from the L1? And so, look, there's training wheels and there's security committees, but in a mature L2, the security committee either doesn't exist because the code base is just trusted, or it has like really stringent requirements. Like most of the people on the security committee are outside the L2 organization. I think like 75%, and like it has a certain amount of delay. And so, like, look, I mean, the security committee is a sketchy ass concept. I totally agree with that, but it is kind of the weak point today. If you look away from the security committee, again, important thing, you get great properties. So for example, like even if Arbitrum, even if they go ahead and pour some coffee on that centralized sequencer, you can actually still use Arbitrum because a mature L2 lets you run layer 2 transactions even if the sequencer is offline, because you can actually just submit them directly to the layer 1. So like if Arbitrum's offline, you can actually just go to like a website that you can still use Arbitrum. I mean, it's kind of clunky today, but it's going to get better and better. Let's say like a million dudes have $5 in Arbitrum, and then Arbitrum gets totally rugged. Like worst case scenario, how do they get that money out? Well, one thing you'll hear commonly is, "Oh, no problem. They can just escape hatch, like it's this magical silver bullet solution." But what is an escape hatch? Well, today, in most cases, an escape hatch is you're withdrawing your funds back to the L1 unilaterally without the L2's permission. Okay, but if I'm a guy with $5, how am I going to withdraw my funds to L1 that has like 15 TPS a second, cost me like $75 transaction fee in 2028 just to like send Ether? It's not a scalable model. So what it's going to look like at scale is these code bases are going to be trusted. They're going to have like super elite security committees with like United Nations level, like, one member in each continent and one member from different geopolitical blocks and zero members in the actual, and like three of the members are going to be like professional. Like there are actually law firms in Cayman Islands that specialize in being security committee and like signers for L2s. So we're seeing like a professional custodian class emerge here. And so long term, if an L2 ever got rugged hard, even a million people with $5 in funds should be able to click one button, and that one button will forcibly include an L2 transaction that swaps their $5 on the rugged L2 for $4.99 on a new L2 of their choice or selected by them before on their behalf by the wallet or the app. And then what actually happens? What's the mechanics there? Well, that $5 on the rugged L2 gets transferred to like some liquidity provider who's like a bridging protocol, and they're getting lots of deposits. They're getting all right, 300 grand in deposits, and then that bridging protocol makes a profit by giving them 499 on the L2, the new L2 that's not rugged, and then eventually the bridging provider takes that 400,000 in assets they accumulated, and they withdraw it to L1 because they can afford the high L1 fee. So really, the L2 security story is really, really promising long term. And like Arbitrum is the L2 today that's by far the furthest along in the security story. They've had fraud proof since day one. They have like a best in class DAO Foundation security committee set up. Uh, they have like great parameters. I think actually in our new L2 safety.info, I'm looking at their thing. The only thing that they have a red light for right now is this 2-day exit window, which I guess is the amount of time you have to withdraw before the upgrade takes effect. I think 2 days is kind of short. So, yeah, I mean, that's this idea that like L2s are just like centralized chains running on people's basements is it's just intellectually bankrupt. It's just not true. But the training wheel story that like some L2s are much better than others, and all L2s have a lot of progress to make before they're approaching the level of trustlessness of the L1 is totally true. Like, why is all the whale money on L1? Why
Right.
does Ethereum have 170 billion some odd, last I measured it a week or two ago, in total app capital, and only a fraction of that on layer two? It's because Ethereum is by far the most decentralized and trusted. And so even though layer twos are already super competitive compared to other alt L1s, and
Mhm.
super competitive compared to like fucking TradFi, where they can just like rug you because it's their system, it's still a big spread between layer two and Ethereum layer one. And so yeah, like I mean, trust the best layer twos, and if you want to know what they are, go to l2beat.com, go to l2safety.info. There's a lot of data out there.
Yeah. I if you look at DeFi Llama, just piggybacking off of what you just said, the total value locked of every other layer one and layer two combined still comes very close to, well, I guess it still doesn't even come close to that of Ethereum. So I think there's something to be said there. Arbitrum is my favorite L2, and I actually am an investor in Arbitrum. I want to talk a bit
Cool.
about tokens. The Arbitrum. I'm an investor in the Arbitrum token.
Okay.
I want to talk a bit about layer two tokens because they all, from what I understand, not all. Sorry, excuse me. A lot of them use Ethereum as the gas token. Are Let's talk about Arbitrum, for example. It
Yeah.
is an ARB token necessary, right? I hear arguments of this is exit liquidity for VCs and the token doesn't do anything, and governance is it's a hoax, and I hear all these different arguments about why in Arbitrum, for example, doesn't need a token, or Optimism doesn't need a token. If you look at L2 Beat, for example, most of a lot of Optimism's TVL, about 29% of it is just their native token. So would love to know what your thoughts are on token models for layer twos.
Absolutely. So I'll kick that off by saying, Noah, that layer two tokens are legitimate and valuable and can be great businesses and great sources of fee accrual, and are absolutely complementary and symbiotic with Ether. And so I'm a huge fan of L2 tokens, and I'm gonna dig into that. But before I do, I just want to go back to this DeFi Llama comment where
Mm-hmm.
you correctly observed that Ethereum has, according to TVL locked across all chains, Ethereum has 56% today, which is 45 billion, and that's across all other chains. So Ethereum's 56 versus Solana 6%, Tron's 10%, and that's great. But keep in mind, DeFi Llama measures value locked in applications. It's not just about capital. It's about like I can take $100 tokens and put them in one protocol, and then they give me like an A token, like their
I got
token,
you.
and then I put that in another. So you can create more TVL than the underlying tokens, which is not a scam. It's just how the system works. And
Sure.
so Ethereum is not just crushing it on total TVL. It's also crushing it on. And here, let me try to. I'm gonna turn off. So if we group L2s, all right, never mind the grouping. When it comes to total app capital, and this is the point that I wanted to make today, actually, as of August 31st, Ethereum had 176 billion across stablecoins, the top 30 tokens, so not the long tail of tokens, only the top 30, real world assets, which is like tokenized treasuries, and then NFT collections based on the floor price of that collection. So that's 176 billion. What's the next closest? Tron has 64 billion, and almost all of that is stable coins driven by their very impressive growth in payments in developing countries. What
Yep.
about Solana? Solana has 14.5 billion, and approximately over half of that is going to be meme coins. And so you have Ethereum here that has something like 13x Solanas, and our percentage of meme coins is going to be like way lower than over half of that capital. And so it's not just about the applications, it's about the money people are trusting on the chain. It's about both. And so, yeah, like Ethereum is so dominant for that reason. And, I would trust Arbitrum so much before I would trust an alt L1 with my money. And like I keep my net worth on chain. Like I didn't like cash out and I got it in some broker somewhere. And so I keep my net worth on the L1, and I'm not about to put it to an L2. But if you force me to, I would pick the most secure L2 out there and I put it on there. I wouldn't bring it to another L1.
Fair enough.
So yeah, really crushing it on that side of investors rewarding our investment in decentralization. They're trusting us with 170 some odd $billion, 13x more than Solana as one comparison.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'll pause there. No, I know you wanted to return to L2 tokens.
Yeah, I want to develop my own thesis, or I want to develop a stronger argument and conviction in the L2 token model. And I think that Arbitrum is a good example to use because, for all the reasons that we discussed, they're the furthest along. They have the most TVL. They seem to have the most activity of all their L2s. And the token, because of the unlock this year, has not done too well. A lot of people are upset about it. I've heard things like this is exit liquidity for the VCs, exit liquidity for the founders, and all this other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to specific market conditions for tokens, obviously there's kind of the bull and the bear, waves of it, and this past wave, is it the end of a mini cycle? Is it the middle of the cycle? Would it ever have happened if not for the BTC ETFs? Like these are all good questions. So there's a question of specific market performance and kind of beta versus the majors, and then there's also a question of like L2 fundamentals. So in terms of L2 fundamentals, I think the case is really quite strong. Like L2 tokens, in a way, have more sources of value accrual than Ether itself. It's like what does Ether enjoy? Ether enjoys monetary premium. Monetary premium is huge. Anything in life can have monetary premium. You can have gold. You can have sneakers. You can have Pokemon cards, Magic the Gathering. You can have like old like art, great example, fine art. And so when we say that Ether has monetary premium, all we're really saying is, fuck you, people want this. And you say, oh no, but it's digital gold and inflation. No, fuck you, people want Ether. They want Ether, just like they want gold. Just like, unfortunately, because I don't like Bitcoin, they want Bitcoin. So like monetary premium is a real human phenomenon. And where does it come from? It comes from confidence. But where does confidence come from? It comes from all kinds of sources. It could come from on-chain economy. If we're doing fucking 10 trillion in business on Ethereum and we stare you in the face and say Ether has value, like the fact we're doing 10 trillion on the chain that Ether's the native token for, it's going to fucking matter. And it's going to matter in a way that's not directly related to inflation or deflation or even fees. It's just a confidence argument. Just like with Bitcoin has its confidence arguments around the 21 million supply cap or the purity of mining or the purity of the Satoshi kind of rising up from nowhere. These are all confidence drivers. And so when we look at that monetary premium factor for L2 tokens, what it really does is you say, all right, well, if an L2 can sustain a network effect from distribution or accumulated tokens and capital and apps and integrations, or a political mindshare, like look at OP Stack. OP Stack has huge political
Mhm.
mindshare, will be an example. So like an L2 token can legitimately enjoy a sustainable monetary premium based on a variety of confidence driving factors. That's monetary premium.
Mhm.
Okay, what's next? Next is fee value accrual. If people are using the L2, it can make profit. What is the revenue? L2 fees, maybe other stuff too. Like in the future, maybe a stable coin pays a fee to an L2 to be like
But
recommended.
those fees aren't. If there was some sort of a revenue share with the token holders, I would understand. But those fees don't really go to the token holders, do they?
Not today. That's absolutely
Mhm.
correct. But I believe that the market forces at play will end up accruing a lot of fee revenue to L2 tokens, law permitting the appetites of teams and their, equity structures. Often there's this tricky thing where not just a token, not just a foundation, but also an equity kind of C corp. Who's entitled to what. I think as competition intensifies, the pressure to turn on the fee switch really goes up. So yeah, I think fee revenue is a material thing, and like what was L2 revenue yesterday? Like it's like 10% of L1 revenue recently, like 500,000 a day. Like 500,000 a day for a new model just for fees to use the system. That's not even application layer fees. That's what people are paying to show up. So it's pretty
Oh
exciting,
wow.
and I think there's going to be a lot of revenue to go around for the most successful L2s. So that kind of speaks to fee accrual. And the third thing, and Ethereum has that. Like right now, we have this big kind of FUD item where the L2 model has been like, it's hilarious because the L2 model has been so successful that everyone moved to L2, that the L1 gas price goes
Yep.
down, that L1 fees
Guays.
are, yeah, the Guays are down. It's 99% total down in some, if you measure it in some ways. And like this, first of all, I wouldn't have said 99%. I would have said, yeah, it's going to go down huge. I
Me
would have
too.
said 90%, 85%. It's gone down a lot more than I expected. And maybe this little bear we're in right now has something to do with that, because there is that relationship right now, because so much activity is
Mhm.
speculative or based on a wealth effect. The wealth effect is this idea that the richer you are, the more you're willing just to spend on like NFTs and random shit and toys as a percentage of your net worth. So
Makes
like if
sense.
it, yeah, and so uh, when it comes to fee accrual on the L1, I'm in the camp that L1 fees are going to be so high someday forever, and we're in this kind of awkward. The L2 model it's in its cocoon. It's just starting to emerge, and it's going to take time. So L1 fees will recover, in my view. Like I want to see, people hate when I say this. God, they hate when I say this, but I want to see like an L1 Uniswap swap cost $5,000. I just yeah,
That's a lot of
I
burnt ETH.
but it's not. You know why? Because it's going to be a low gas price and 50,000 a coin.
I see what you're saying. I
And
see.
so it,
You're
it
right.
and so if there's billions of people using layer 2, who's using layer 1? Well, who's using the Manhattan penthouses today?
Right.
Who's buying the office space on Park Avenue? Same concept. There's going to be this whole on-chain economy with incredible diversity and incredible applications that we can't even imagine today. It's going to eat the economic world. The whole world's going to run on chain because it's just like 100 times better, more convenient, more secure, more lower friction, more globalized, more egalitarian, more permissionless. Like everyone's going to use on chain. Only question is, where are they going to use it? Well, it's going to be L2s. Why? Because they're better than alt L1s. Like they're just a better deal for operators. Don't believe me, believe Coinbase, Immutable X. A lot of people don't think about Immutable X. It's this big gaming juggernaut. These Immutable X guys have been studying scaling solutions since before any of us heard about Ethereum. Like they came up OG, and they went through the ringer. They tried so much shit before they settled on a ZK EVM Validium on Ethereum. Like they tried everything and they said this is the best. Coinbase looked at everything and said we're going to bet our business on L2s. Sony looked at a whole bunch of shit, and their new partner Samsung, and
Yeah.
said L2s are where we're at. So like L2s are a great deal for the world, and as L2 activity ramps up, L1 fees are going to ramp up. We're going to get really good fee accrual, and so just talking on the overall topic of L2 tokens and why they're valuable. I think we're going to see great fee accrual for both L2s as they turn the fee switch on, and
Mhm.
for the L1 is what I think. And so the last thing for L2 tokens is that unlike the L1, the L2 tokens are often invariably literally used for governance. Ether token holders don't get to vote on the roadmap. That is super intentional. Everybody likes it that way. But L2 token holders do get to vote on security upgrades, fee switches, all kinds of things. There is fundamental value in control. Don't even tell me that a governance token for an L2 that's a ghost town is worth the same on an apples to apples basis as a governance token for an L2 with a trillion in
Yep.
trade volume. So there's value in control. And so that's
Mhm.
the L2 token. The L2 tokens have this three sources of value accrual: it's monetary premium, fees, and control.
On that note, let's talk about Base, because when Coinbase decided they were going to go the L2 route as a long-term Ethereum holder, I got very excited. And the reasons are maybe obvious to you and I, but maybe not so obvious to someone listening. Coinbase is one of the biggest centralized exchanges in the world, and the biggest that serves citizens of the US, where a lot of the liquidity comes into crypto. This is exciting for me because they've essentially built this bridge from the new user who onboards to Coinbase, this bridge onto their chain, which has the front end UI of their wallet layered on top of it. So we all talk about mass adoption as when grandma and grandpa are interfacing with with Web3, the way that they do with Web2. So I'm very excited for what Base has done. I'm very bullish on Base, and I'm very bullish on Coinbase. A lot of folks make this argument that, and I don't know if I'm stuck in this microcosm of crypto Twitter, and maybe I'm drinking too much of their Kool-Aid, but a lot of folks make this argument that Base is the future of Ethereum, or Base can, change. They can convert from an L2 to an L1 anytime that they want. And I know that's not true, but I don't have a good explanation because I'm not a technical guy. Can you dive into why this is just simply not the case, and why, in fact, Base's success is only going to draw more attention and popularity to Ethereum?
Right. So, first of all, the idea of Base converting from an L2 to an L1 is a total non starter. First of all, the moment they would do that, all the TVL bridged from the L1 would become a cross L1 bridge and subject to new kinds of risks. One of the key benefits of the L2 ecosystem is that L2s can not only trustlessly bridge from the L1, but from any other L2 through like a little slim commitment on the L1. So today, when we think of bridging, we think of like, I'm going to take my ether and bring it to Base and put it in a protocol, and I'm going to have some fun, or I'm going to get lower fees. But what the future of bridging is, the future of bridging is point to point across chain. It's my app on Base wants to talk to my app on Starknet, or my app on ZK Sync. How are we going to do that kind of cross chain, function call, or that cross chain message? And it's also going to be things like uh, cross L2 bridging of any kind of asset that was created anywhere. So today, when we say like bridging, we think I have an asset that was created on the L1 and I bring it to L2. However, it only does that for fungible tokens. What about the NFTs? There's not really any serious NFT bridges today. And maybe that's just because NFTs are either, the long tail is like not worth building that bridging technology, and the short tail, like CryptoPunks, are all owned by whales who want to stay on the L1 anyway. So there's no kind of business case for NFT bridging today. But in the future, NFTs are going to be like student loans, or NFT is not just a PFP. An NFT is just some non-fungible piece of property. So we're going to need NFT bridges. That's one example. Another example is going to be cross L2 bridging. So if you have an L2 that has its own token that you've created on there, so you made a meme token on Base, then your meme token gets really famous. All of a sudden, you want to use that token for any reason at all on Arbitrum. How do you take that token that you created on Base that doesn't exist on L1 and you bring it to Arbitrum, or you bring it back to the L1? We call that kind of like reverse bridging. And that's not mature at all yet today. But in the future, it's going to be huge. And so this idea that being an L2 is just like Coinbase is only an L2 to get started. Like they're just humoring Ethereum. Well, no. First of all, if they split off into an L1, they're going to lose access to all this bridging that's going to get more and more complicated and glorious and high value as the whole thing matures. That's the first thing. It's just this Ethereum is like a siloed, secure zone of the internet. And if you're on a different L1, you're outside that firewall. You're outside the Great Wall of Ethereum. And Base isn't going to want to do that. They know that. They've written about that. Second reason, control is liability. If Base becomes an L1, all of a sudden, they're responsible for you deploying like an OFAC sanctioned, or you rugging, people can actually point at Base and be like, yo, what are you doing here? Like you control the majority of the validators in your L1 chain. And basically it's like a private, a publicly accessible corporate blockchain. You can just rug us. It creates all kinds of liability issues from Coinbase. And so if you look at what Jesse, the Base leader, has written, they are committed to using Ethereum in an L2 capacity specifically because they don't want to control it, because they know that they have this incredible generational opportunity to build the future of consumer finance and adjacent areas on chain, and they don't have to control the chain to benefit from that business. So they see the L2 model as being a sort of an eat your cake and have it too situation. So they're not going to become an L1.
Fair enough. Ryan, what future L2s are you excited for? And you can mention some of the ones that we've already talked about. I know Sony has come out and said they're going to spin up their own L2, and I think that's very exciting, just given who Sony is and what they bring to the table.
I'm excited for corporate and government adoption. The reason that it's a big opportunity for Coinbase is specifically because of it's not just their technical chops, which is a very material, gives them a head start. It's also because of their distribution. And so the technical work that Coinbase is doing now will eventually be commodity open source software across all areas of the stack. So what does that leave them? Distribution. Okay, who else has distribution? Fucking all kinds of people. There's all kinds of big companies all across the world that have existing customer bases. And that's what projects like Sony's L2 is all about. They have some existing businesses. They see an opportunity to take what they have and do more with it. And I'm just excited for all these corporate and government L2s. They're going to see these huge opportunities to benefit from coming on chain. Because that's really what it's all about. It's not about like creating castles in the sky for just like crypto native people to, like have like on-chain party time. It's about helping ordinary humans. And so we really want to see the corporate adoption. I think Sony is a fantastic example of that right now.
Ryan, fragmentation. This is a big criticism that L2s get. And you kind of touched on what the future looks like, being able to bridge an NFT or an asset that was minted on Base to Arbitrum and then to Metis or then to the immutable. Because from what I've understood, currently the way that bridging works is something is something is minted on the L1, it gets bridged to the L2, it gets locked, and so it gets locked in some contract, and then a wrapped version gets spit out on the L2, and then you can go from L2 to L2, which a lot of folks do, and you can use Jumper Exchange, which is powered by Li-Fi, and the experience is honestly quite seamless. I mean, if you think about how much bridging has evolved from the end user perspective. Back in 2021, I wanted to bridge to Harmony and invest in a project. I spent 3 hours that night trying to figure out how to get from Ethereum to BNB chain, then to Harmony, because I couldn't go straight from Ethereum to Harmony. And today I can just go to Jumper Exchange, which is a cross bridge aggregator, and I can pick my point of departure, my arrival point. I pay the fees, and boom, I'm there. Again, I've been told there are security risks. I've been told that we saw that. I think it was what was the hack that affected wrap assets on Avalanche? I don't remember off the top of my head, but there are inherent risks. Can you dive into what some of the issues currently are with fragmentation and how you believe those will be resolved in the future? Again, you did talk about this layer where you're able to go from layer 2 to layer 2 to layer 2 to layer 1 with relatively close to zero security risk.
Right. No, you give a great overview of like bridging evolution, and a site that I like that I use personally is called Bungee.exchange. And to your point, like compared to 2 years ago when uh, you know, trying to get places, trying to move your money for basic transfer across chains, even across L2s, was really really difficult. And now it's getting a lot easier. And bridging's a key part of that fragmentation story. But fragmentation is this really broad concept of, given all the stuff going on layer 2, what are all the ways it's not as convenient as if it was one single infinitely scalable chain, like the Solana folks like to say is their advantage. Of course, they're adopting L2s now, right? So, and so fragmentation it's everything. It's, why do I have to switch chains in my wallet? Why do I have to tell whether I have bridged USDC or native USDC? Why do I have to figure out, like, I'm trying to pay you and oops, I have DAI on Arbitrum, but you only, you don't know that, or you haven't heard of that. How do we make that connection? Fragmentation is, I'm playing an on-chain game, or I'm using some kind of app, and it's on one chain, and it wants to do something on another chain. Anything. Maybe it wants to, make a little swap. Maybe it wants to do an attestation, or even just like send over a secure log message to let another app know that like something cool's going on. Like fragmentation is, why is it so hard to connect these dope things we made together into a cohesive whole? And there's not going to be any one silver bullet solution. We're always going to, be chipping away at that, kind of how like the internet and phones have gotten gradually better, over the decades. And so that would be like kind of the main thing about fragmentation. No silver bullets, encompasses a lot of different factors. Now, liquidity fragmentation, that's like something people zoom in on often as a big thing, where they say, oh, well, liquidity fragmentation is why do these tokens trade on different chains? They should just trade on one single chain so we have as deep liquidity as possible. And, I just got to say, I'm sorry, that is not how the world works. People have bigger pain points than putting all tokens on a single chain in a single order book. Like, there are going to be very, very, very deep sources of liquidity on many chains. And it's going to, might depend on like which chains prefer which assets, or have which communities that prefer which assets. Like, for example, right now on Base, I know they were advertising that like their Ether USDC pair on Uniswap V3 is like really, really deep. Good for them, right? There's going to be like other kinds of assets that have better liquidity elsewhere. So, liquidity fragmentation, I don't think is a real problem, is my view. Not a lot of, not everybody agrees with that.
Sure. It's undoubtable to me that the EVM has a strong first mover advantage. With that said, you also made the argument that it's not going to be a zero sum game, and that you think, for example, Solana is going to do just fine. It won't have the same percentage of Ethereum's total market cap. And I'm quoting you that it won't have the same percentage of Ethereum's market cap in the future that it does today, in your opinion, but it'll still be fine. And maybe Algorand will still be fine. And maybe all the Avalanche with their subnets will still be fine. Does the future of interoperability, what does the future of interoperability look like to you? Is it all of these ecosystems with Avalanche's subnets and Ethereum's layer twos and Solana, and you said they're having layer twos now too. Do you just have a sleek, clean front end UI that allows you to go from layer one to layer two to layer one and so on and so forth, where we don't even see what's happening on the back end anymore? We're just hitting a button on our phone and boom, we're staked, or we're trading, or boom, all these microtransactions are happening in an MMORPG.
That's totally how it's going to work, Noah. It's just going to be boom, it figures it out across however many chains, however many steps, one click, done deal. Just like you can't even imagine how much stuff goes on behind the scenes when you click the one-click buy now on Amazon.com. I worked there years ago, and it was already pretty complicated, and it must be like just insane now. So putting all that complexity behind a single click is definitely the goal. That being said, I think that because it's going to take so long to hit a steady state for quality and UX, like decades, like we're still not done on the internet. We've been going since the early 90s if you ask some people, mid 70s if you ask others. Like it's going to take so long to keep cooking this stuff. And it's my view that EVM has such a strong network effect, and it's getting so much incredible state-of-the-art research, including like on performance now, that EVM to EVM, like the absolute gold standard of interop is going to, for a long, long time, it's going to be EVM L2 to another EVM L2, or apps on the same EVM L2. So like EVM L2, gold standard. After that, it's going to be other L2, like across the next gold standard is going to be non-EVM L2, same architecture, like Starknet L2, where like between two Starknet apps or two Starknet chains, you're going to have amazing interop. And I think that's going to lag EVM a bit because there's just so many more developers on EVM crunching on these problems. And then kind of below that, like further into the friction stack, you're going to have across architectures. It's going to be like EVM L2 trying to talk to a Starknet L2. And then, way down, buried at the bottom barrel there is going to be, across L1 with different architectures, like EVM L2 trying to talk to a Solana program or an Avalanche program. So yeah, I think Interop is looking to do what you described. We want to have one click that's magic for everything that anyone wants to do. But in our journey to get there, there's going to be certain kinds of setups that are way, way further ahead. And you can just see this in like the 10-minute coding tutorials, like the amount of magic you get on EVM out of the box and on L2, it's really significant. And so I'll just circle back to a comment you made about like Solana being around steady state. Yeah, they will. I would say Solana is the only program, like excluding Bitcoin, that doesn't have an app layer. Solana is the only other L1 that has, for various reasons, achieved enough of a critical mass that they're just going to keep going. I'm not arguing Solana's going to die. I'm arguing Solana's market share and token market cap ETH ratio is going to continue to go down over the medium term. Next 6 to 18 months, this bull run, anything could happen, but I think you look 2, 3, 5 years, you're going to see Solana declining in market share, even as their community, which has this critical mass, is going to continue. As for like Avalanche, Stellar, Near, Algorand, all the others, it wouldn't surprise me if all of them, die or putter out into nothing. Like, there are still some social sites I went on as a kid. Like, what about like dig.com? There you go. Dig.com, 2 G's. This shit was huge when I was in elementary school. And it's still live today. And nobody's heard of it and nobody uses it. So, that's going to be fucking Avalanche. Ask Jeeves. Yeah, that's right.
Let me see what it goes to now. Oh, it's still around. That's so funny. Okay, so let's circle back to Solana for a minute. You mentioned that they're also now implementing L2s. Is it a similar L2 model as Ethereum, or are they taking a different approach from what you understand?
Right. So there's two aspects, a few aspects to Solana's adoption of L2s. The first, in no particular order to do kind of the FUD one first is that uh, recently there was some argument from Solana that what they're building is not actually L2s, it's like network extensions. And although the technology may be similar, network extensions are, blah, 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 blah. This network extension thing, look, they can call L2s whatever they want, but a network extension is a fucking L2, including all the examples they gave. So really, it's just they are adopting L2s. They're not adopting like something else that's not L2s, but kind of resembles L2s. It's just L2s. Just call it L2s, guys. Come on, do yourselves a favor. That's the first part. The second part is that, and this is a good point that Kyle Samani made earlier this week, is that because Solana has excellent L1 scalability, the likelihood of generalized Solana L2s that simply provide scalable execution emerging is greatly decreased. You know, if you're Kyle and you believe in strong views strongly held, you'd probably say, oh, they'll never emerge. Well, they might, Kyle. Just wait. But he makes a good point that because the L1 is so scalable, there's less impetus, less reason for
Mm-hmm.
generalized, come here just because there's block space type L2s. Now, what we're going to see a ton of on Solana and on Ethereum, as we have on Ethereum already for years, is application specific L2s, where they're making an L2 that has a specific job to do. And that job might just be to scale a generalized algorithm really hard. Where, like, let me say that again. Like an app specific L2 doesn't have to be a custom hand tailored code base. It could be, and many of them are, where they're optimizing their tech stack for payments or intellectual property. Uh, uh, or it can be a custom L2 that it's just a fork of, it's an Arbitrum orbit chain, but all of the block space is used for one purpose, like a video game, or like maybe a small town has an L2 for their like they put all their government stuff on the same L2. And so, yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of app specific L2s on Solana, and I think they take that view as well. And as for generalized L2s, Ethereum wants and needs those. And Solana, I suspect it'll emerge in time. Keep in mind, Solana's not going to be nearly as good a settlement layer as Ethereum because we invested all this resources into maximum decentralization. I'll say also that even though two generalized L2s may like look the same today, it may turn out that even generalized L2s have like specialized parts to it. Where like you might, oh yeah, those are two restaurants or two food courts. It's like, well, okay, yeah, they're both places you eat at, but like one of them's Italian, one of them's sushi. Oh, they're two food courts. You can grab lunch, sit down. Okay, but one of them has three hot dog stands and the average price is $6, and one of them has all gourmet, average price $27. So we're going to see just a tremendous amount of almost like biological diversity in L2s. There's going to be for rich people, for long tail, for specific countries, specific languages. Recently, there's an L2 on Ethereum that's trying to put together a halal
Yeah.
finance ecosystem. Totally cool. Like, I wish these guys luck. It's great. So, like, whatever you want to make an L2 for, it's kind of like a subreddit. Like, it doesn't matter what you want it for, just like go with it. And
Mhm.
so, there's going to be great diversity there, and we'll see some of that on Solana, and a ton of it on Ethereum. I think as we gain market share.
I think it's undoubtable that Solana has an extremely strong community and network effect when so many other layer ones have failed to achieve the same level of growth. I remember on the space us having the conversation or it being mentioned that ETH has a narrative problem. I wonder I wonder how much of that is true. And I wonder how much of it is just us being in that microcosm echo chamber that is crypto Twitter. What are your thoughts? And what do you think that Ethereum can learn from Solana?
Yeah, I think let's start with what Ethereum can learn from Solana. Without a doubt, there are two things about Solana that I really think they've done a killer job on, besides just succeeding. Uh, One is that they're so curious about novel applications. They're so hungry to find stuff that works in the app layer that they're willing to try all kinds of wacky experiments that Ethereum people for many years, honestly, were sort of dismissive of, and like I didn't think of that, or that's not fully decentralized, or that's not a valid blockchain use case because it doesn't correspond with my beliefs. But Solana's curiosity in the app layer has led to major wins, such as Hive Mapper, their like pretty cool mapping application that like I wish was an Ethereum L2, and it's not. It's on Solana. They've crushed that. Like Helium, I wish Helium had an Ethereum L2, but no, it's on Solana. Helium is now selling phone network access to major carriers in America. Like that's fucking dope. Like they made something that actually works. That like Verizon called them up and said, "Yo, we want to buy some of what you're making." Like that's great. That's great. They deserve the recognition for that curiosity, that hunger for app layer success that I think was missing from Ethereum for years. But we've got it now. Ethereum people, I think if I click for us in the last little while, I think Base had a lot to do with that. The Base folks just came from a consumer background, and they're strong and aggressive and nice and popular and connected all the way to to the heart of the community, and the different hearts. And the Coinbase Mafia is like famously founded a lot of companies. And so when they take that consumer focus and they like tell folks to like bases for everyone, build things on Base, get these micro grants, it starts bringing that culture of curiosity that Ethereum was, I think, lacking for a long time. So Solana did that really well. uh, Another thing Solana did well is simply the vertical. They hate when I say this, but they vertically integrated their chain core developer community with their business development. Like in Ethereum, the people who like make the protocol and make the chain are not the same people who sell stuff or do partnerships or like sit down and have fireside chat with senators or promote specific applications. But Solana's comfortable doing all of that. Like the just as like an example of this, the at Solana Twitter account. One day it'll be like announcing major awesome protocol upgrade, and then the next day it'll be like check out this dope meme coin app. And like they're comfortable doing the full spectrum of integrated promotion. Ethereum's not like that, and by being a more frankly centralized, vertically integrated, cohesive whole, Solana has, in my view, brought a very successful kind of corporate approach to block L1 development, L1 growth. So that's something I have to kind of give them kudos on for sure. Yeah, I'll pause there.
Yeah, they're certainly crushing it on that front. Sorry, I had to mute my mic for a second. Do you think that Solana is going to be able to solve this? I know it hasn't happened in a while, but this outage problem. From what I understand, when there is an outage, you basically can't do anything on chain. So let's say an outage happens and I have, like you, a lot of my net worth locked on a DeFi protocol on Solana. And as that network outage happens, there is also a Black Swan event, or maybe not a Black Swan event, but there is news that rattles me to the point where I want to remove some of my assets and liquidate just to hedge. But the chain's down for 7 hours, so I can't do anything. Immediately when I think about that, I think to myself, well, I'd rather just pay the premium in Gwei on Ethereum and not have to deal with something like this. Do you think they're going to be able to get past this network outage bottleneck and not have it happen again in the future?
Yeah, no, I mean, Solana's in a fool me twice, fool me once, fool me twice, fool me three, four times. I mean, they've had a series of major outages. I don't recall when the last one is. It's been a while now, which is good for them. And I think bottom line, like, this is a pattern for them. And if they have another major outage, like, it doesn't have to be me fudding Solana. Like, serious stakeholders just see this shit. It's unbelievably unacceptable. And by the way, these outages were super damaging before Solana even had much of a real app layer at all. Like even at those outages were damaging at yesterday's growth levels. Like part of the reason we kind of get on Solana's case, and we don't really think they've been very honest in some ways, directly. Not always. There's a lot of great folks in the Solana builder community, a lot of great teams, a lot of great people, a lot of great ideas. but they'll say things that sort of suggest that they should be the future of France. They're like, no, 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 fuck putting all those trillions and stuff on Ethereum. Come over here. We got you. We got you. But it's like, man, do you have any idea the catastrophic shit you could fuck up if you have a major outage once you have real world activity?
Yeah.
Like, it's not just about the price of Solana token falling. It's all the other prices and all the other guarantees you've made to all kinds of people, and it's not just about finance. It's about like what happens when people are starting to use these systems to run like, I don't know, mission critical logistics, and your chain goes down, and it's like, oops, a container ship couldn't fucking leave San Francisco, so now like 1,000 people are going to go hungry in Peru. Like, it's just fucking bullshit. And Ethereum has never gone down, and so that's Solana's task now, to never have another outage ever again. And should they have an outage, they deserve every little bit of you know negativity and skepticism that comes their way, because it is the job of these layer ones to be online and to make commitments. And if Solana can't do that, then they got to get out of the game.
So I think Solana had its big resurgence and kind of a second wind of popularity once, shortly after the Bitcoin ETF was announced. We started to see all kinds of meme tokens, right? We had meme season, the likes of, I don't know if anyone ever expected to see. And Pump.fun certainly played a huge role in allowing that to happen, allowing anyone and their mom to churn up a meme token and have it trade on the open market. If outside of memes and shitcoins, you did highlight the fact that Solana does a great job of trying to find legitimate use cases, whether it's what Helium is doing, whether it's the mobile phone that they're launching, or the first one and the second one. If you remove the memes and the shitcoins, where do you think Solana stands? And well, not shitcoins, because I think that's a lot more broad. If you remove the memes, where do you think Solana stands, and what areas, other than what we've already discussed, do you think it can thrive in?
I mean, I'm not a Solana bull, so I don't want to speculate too positively on their behalf. But like Solana's opportunity, when I say this, it's to lean into their centralization. Solana famously sold only a very tiny, only like 2% of their token to the public. Like 98% was sold insider. Ethereum, it was like 100% ICO public sale. There's never like one single ether sold like through like there was founders of Ethereum that got an allocation, founders of the EF like Vitalik, but like it all went through ICO. Like one of the ironies of crypto is that when you launch a token and you keep most of it for yourself, or like much of it, people are like, oh, you kept it all for yourself and you're gonna like dump on me, and then your token doesn't get big in the first place because they're like, you kept it all. Okay, but let's say you're able to overcome that and you get to a position where your token is like beloved and growing. Well, okay, now the fact that you kept a lot of it for yourself is actually flipped from a hard negative to a huge positive, because now you have lower circulating supply, helps your token pump harder, because you're not going to dump and you have so much of it. You're going to wait, and 10 years from now you're going to sell it to like some Swiss billionaire in a strategic token, off the books. Like they're not going to dump. And then at least not the Solana Foundation, maybe the VCs that got there's huge fucking unlocks coming in March next year, like giga unlocks, like what is it, like I don't have the number handy, like 9 or 12 billion. It's huge. And so Solana has so much of their own token, the foundation, and probably like the founders and the key VC firms, that they can buy growth now. They can afford to do things that make the Ethereum Foundation blush from both a cost and neutrality perspective. Like Ethereum Foundation would never in a million years put on some massive 1,000,000-person party in like Punta Cana to like have like Solana Rave 6.0. Let's get 1,000,000 people on one beach. It's a 27-kilometer mile beach. Like Ethereum people would never spend the money on that. They'd be like, that is not neutral. That sounds really crazy. What does that have to do with, making humanity flourish? And that's what I love about Ethereum, right? They're my people. Like I believe in the vision. But Solana
True.
is willing to do this, and they have the money. They have like something like 15 times the Ethereum Foundation's assets on a dollar value basis. A dollar value basis. If Solana was able to reach the same market cap as Ethereum, which I don't think will ever happen, ever, not even close. I think we're pretty much at historical highs here. We might see another, glorious pump this cycle to fucking wherever. It's going to be unsustainable. I think the market share collapses into the end of the decade, is my view. But let's just imagine in this crazy alternate reality where it did go 1-to-1. If it went 1-to-1, the Solana Foundation would have something like, and apologies if I'm misremembering these numbers, but I believe it would have something like, I think Ethereum Foundation has like less than $1 billion now, like 800 million or so. And again, apology, these numbers are wrong. And Solana Foundation has like over 10 billion. So if you dollars, and then you make the market caps the same, all of a sudden Solana is like 60 times richer than Ethereum because they kept all their token. Makes them so that Solana's opportunity is to lean into their centralization. They got to go to fucking Microsoft and Google, and they launched a phone. Launching a phone was my idea. I posted it in a place they saw it over a year before they announced it. I'm not saying they did it because of me. I'm just saying that like they can do things Ethereum can't. They can run $100 million phone loss leader program because it could lead to long-term growth. They can run massive incentive campaigns. They can afford to spend huge on integrations and partnerships that would be so hard to bootstrap. Uh, how much does Google pay Mozilla to make Google the default search engine on Firefox? Like 400 million a year or something. Like Solana's opportunity is to lean into their centralization and their wealth and figure out those partnerships that are inaccessible and unaffordable for Ethereum because the money in Ethereum is literally decentralized. There's like a lot of people who are super rich and independent, much more so than Solana. That's their opportunity.
Fair enough. One of the core DAO guys recently said that Bitcoin's DeFi TVL, once that happens, is going to eventually flip Ethereum's. And I've heard this thesis a lot throughout this last year in different Bitcoin spaces that I jump on. Bitcoin has a higher market cap. There's all this unlocked liquidity on Bitcoin. Once you tap into that, then you're going to have a DeFi ecosystem that not dwarfs, but is legitimately larger than Ethereum's. What do you say to that, and why do you think that's not going to be the case?
There's a few parts to this. So first, Noah, you might have heard of Udi and Eric Wall's venture, like Cat VM, like the Cat NFTs and the Wizard NFTs. They're like the Wizard and Cat people.
Yeah,
Good
yeah.
for them. Yeah, it's working out. And actually, it is really working out because Eric Wall, I believe, sits on the board of Starkware. And Starkware is a company that got its start with a grant from, I think, the EF or Vitalik. They were like an Ethereum homegrown organization. But the people who run Starkware are massive Bitcoin fans, and they've staked a really big chunk of Starkware's future. They're splitting their focus between Ethereum and Bitcoin. And their goal is to get Bitcoin to have a fork to adopt this old Bitcoin opcode that used to be live and was turned off called CAT. It's actually called like OP CAT, not to be confused with OP Optimism on Ethereum. And it turns out that through the magic of like nerdery, OP CAT is enough to build truly real L2s on Bitcoin. Right now, every single Bitcoin L2 project that says they're an L2, including and especially Stacks, who are liars, and the Citria, who are earnest developers, but also kind of liars. They all say they're real L2s. They're not. They're like custodial side chains that they're side chains. There's no real L2s on Bitcoin today. You can't build one. But Starkware and the Udi and Eric Wall, they are trying to get Bitcoin community to agree to this cat fork to adopt real L2s on Bitcoin. And if that happens, I think we'll definitely see huge amounts of Bitcoin TVL being deposited because people are going to be so excited to like support this new Bitcoin L2, and they'll be like, oh look, Ethereum has 10 billion, we can match that overnight because our asset's bigger and we got nothing else to do with it on L1. Let's fucking go. So they'll be putting that Bitcoin into Bitcoin L2s, and I think it'll produce some pretty impressive numbers, should they manage to get that far. But the question is, can you bring the world on chain on Bitcoin? Is it better? Is the world better off on chain on Bitcoin? The answer is fucking no. It's definitely not. Proof of work is not good for a global settlement layer because of our previous segment about it having less efficient security than proof of stake. And Bitcoin's security budget is currently fucked because the halvenings are like rugging Bitcoin's ability to stay secure, and it's going to cause 51% attacks. And if you ask the Bitcoiners about that, there's basically three camps. The first camp is they just don't even know about it because there's so many Bitcoiners that are just like 21 million, man, and they don't actually know that Bitcoin gets insecure in about 8 years. Like, look it up. The second camp is that there are people who are genuinely concerned about this, and the way they're trying to fix it is by building L2s on Bitcoin so that the L2s pay higher revenue to Bitcoin so that that revenue fixes the security budget. These people are also going to fail because there's just not going to be enough money in it to solve Bitcoin's security budget without preventing a need to exceed the 21 million supply cap. Because Bitcoin is going to need a certain amount of inflation in perpetuity. It's not going to be a lot. It might be like 1.5% or 2%. But this idea that there's going to be only 21 million Bitcoin ever is patently untrue. It's absolutely untrue. Don't ask me, ask the people who make the cats and wizards. Ask them, say, if you guys fail and you guys don't make L2s for Bitcoin, what's going to happen to the 21 million supply cap? And they will tell you they're going to need to add permanent small inflation to Bitcoin because the transaction fees are not enough to secure the chain. That brings us to the third camp. The third camp of people are the ones who literally don't think this is a problem. You got some homies out there who are arguing that it's okay if Bitcoin gets 51% attacked repeatedly. They're like, it's fine. 51% attack can only do a double spend. They can't change the rules of Bitcoin. They can't create Bitcoin. They'll just, they won't want to do it anyway because it's expensive. And I think these people are just totally fucking delusional. I think the amount of flexibility you have in making money off a Bitcoin attack once such an attack is feasible is so high. You got all kinds of, leveraged short positions on BTC would be like a very obvious play. But there's going to be others, right? There's going to be others. And so, the first camp that doesn't realize Bitcoin's security budget is rugging itself in about 2 more halvings is just like, you're at the Bitcoin church, man, and instead you got to go to the Bitcoin university. Like, you got to find out what's up. And the second camp of these wizard and cat people, I just don't think they're going to be successful. I think either Bitcoin community will not adopt cat or might adopt cat after the crisis occurs. And even if they do, I think it's going to be too little too late. I don't think they're going to be able to inspire on-chain economy to match a sliver of Ethereum's L2, L2 sprawling across the world and all these corporations and governments. And the third camp of it's not going to be a big deal, that's one just a big thumbs up, because if you don't think that it's going to hurt Bitcoin to have accessible 51% attacks, that's just total nonsense. It's going to undermine confidence in Bitcoin dramatically and permanently the day that Bitcoin's security budget gets so low that it has like real serious 51% attacks like we've seen historically in certain Bitcoin forks. So Bitcoin DeFi, it's unrealistic at scale compared to Ethereum. You can do it, and you can have this OP cat adoption. You can have real L2s. You can bridge your Bitcoin in. You're going to get all kinds of people who are going to want to start protocols because it's like a whole new pump and dump opportunity to have governance tokens on Bitcoin. Starkware is going to build all kinds of bridges between their Starknet on. Actually, they announced this. What they want to do is they want to have an anti-fragmented Starknet where there's 2 different Starknet L2s, but the Starknet application SDKs try to hide that so that the fact that you're constantly cross L1 bridging between these, not constantly, but if you have to, you're not going to know it. So like there's a lot of folks working on this, but the future is not very bright for Bitcoin. It really, really is not. And, from a price perspective, I'm hopeful that this cycle will be a Bitcoin ratio high, as we start seeing legitimacy of L2 model and like massive on-chain adoption, from like Coinbase and Immutable X and Sony and all these other great companies and organizations working on this. And then, just as Ethereum star is rising, like 4 years from now, Uncle Sam's going to be like, Uncle Sam wants you to hold stablecoins because they got a fucking national debt crisis and stablecoins are backed by treasuries. And so Ethereum star is going to rise just as the Bitcoin security crisis really becomes common knowledge and comes to fruition. It's going to be fucking catastrophic for Bitcoin. The result's not going to be Bitcoin passing Ethereum in DeFi. It's going to be the flippening. It's going to be Ethereum flipping Bitcoin, which I had predicted within 4 years of the merge and probably was an aggressive timeline.
I think there's a lot to unpack here, Ryan, and I think that we'll probably have to leave the Bitcoin versus Ethereum debate for another pod because I have a lot of questions. I think that I need to do a little bit more research before we have a broader conversation about that. I do want to point one thing out. The last time Ethereum was at a all-time high against Bitcoin, from what I understand, is in 2017 at 15 million Satoshis. And in the previous bull, I think it got as high as a little under 10 million Satoshis. And it's just been eating shit against Bitcoin ever since. And I'm a holder of both. It does frustrate me because my conviction in Ethereum 2 years ago was stronger than my conviction in Bitcoin. Again, I want to unpack some of the things you said in the future about the supply cap being raised and the 51% attacks and all this. I do agree with you that I'm not a huge believer of Bitcoin's DeFi ecosystem just coming out of nowhere and flipping Ethereums. But can you explain why the Ether price has suffered relative to Bitcoin over the years? And can you also explain why you think there'll be a flippening in the next 2 to 4 years? Let's go with that timeline.
Yep. So the reason why Ethereum got so high against Bitcoin in the first place in 2017 and 21 is A, people believed in this vision of the on-chain app store, and B, they were buying Ethereum so that they could take the Ethereum and buy ICO tokens and hope to like make a. So there was like a market aspect to that in terms of like the phenomenon at the time. And then the reason why it's been suffering for so long now is because we're in this journey through the desert of the L2 model finding its legs. Like there are hardcore Ethereum people who build world-class Ethereum apps who don't believe in the L2 model. Like I talk to them all the time. They think that not scaling the L1 was a mistake. They think the L1 should have more block space and rely less on the L1 L2 relationship. And I just don't think that's right. So I think we're not going to get to see great Ether ratios until it is obvious to not just everybody in Ethereum, but also outside of Ethereum, that Ethereum is totally fucking crushing it. And the FUD is just significant. You got L2s are parasitic, L1's not going to have fees, L2s are insecure, alt L1s are better anyway. You've seen some FUD not just coming down from Bitcoin, but coming up from Solana of like, oh, too bad Ethereum needed L2s. Solana fixes that. And so we're just on a journey. Ethereum needs to fix its own shit before we can start challenging Bitcoin again. And that's really what this year and maybe next year are about. So in terms of the flippening, I mean, there's just a checklist of shit that's going to happen, and then we'll flip. It's going to be like L1 fees get really high again. L2s are like totally dominant of just insane levels of users and TVL and corporate adoption. Proof of stake is a little older and more trusted. Maybe US adopts stablecoin regulation that creates like a gold rush effect in terms of American institutions coming on chain on Ethereum. And so like until these things happen, we don't have even a credible, also the pressure down from Bitcoin falling due to security budget crisis that doesn't kick in for another another one or two, not really one, really two or more halvenings. And so we're just not, what I said about the 2 to 4 years, I don't even necessarily, I want to believe that, but I no longer believe that the way I did.
Mm-hmm.
My prediction was about 2 years. 2 years to the merge is on what, the 15th. So the merge is coming up, the 2 year anniversary. I had
Yep.
believed it would be 2 more years, and I just don't know if we're going to flip then. I think it's very, very unlikely. I think we got to check these boxes, and then I think we're going to flip real hard when it becomes clear that Ethereum's the future of the global economy, and Bitcoin is this insecure kind of nostalgic pet rock that like does nothing.
I lost my train of thought for a second. I definitely want to dive into that with you in the future. Dang it. So yeah, with Ethereum, I completely forgot what I was going to ask. So let's dive into the last segment because we are at the top of the hour. I wanted to get your thoughts on the broader crypto market, the current state of the market, current state of our industry. I think that I would make the argument, and some even disagree with me on DeFi, that DeFi is really the only sector of crypto that has found product market fit. So let's use lending markets as an example. Right? Being able to collateralize an asset like Ethereum on Aave and avoid paying capital gains. You're bullish on Ethereum, so you don't want to sell it. You borrow against that asset on Aave for, on average, I've been paying like 3 to 4% interest. So amazing rate. I don't have to fill out any paperwork. I don't have to go into a bank and go through all. And I don't know if anyone else listening or that's going to watch this has tried to go get a loan from a bank. It is a pain in the ass. And you can show them how much you're worth. You can show them what's in the bank account. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they start taking fingerprints in the future to get a loan. So this is a remarkable technology that allows me to trustlessly lock my asset, borrow against it, and go live my life. To me, that is something that's found product market fit, but maybe not to the same degree that stable coins have found product market fit, in the sense that they allow people in unstable countries like Venezuela, like Lebanon, like Nigeria, like Iran, that wouldn't otherwise have access to the world reserve currency to be able to self-custody it and protect their wealth. So that to me is paradigm shifting. What are your thoughts on one what I just said? But secondly, I would love to know what you think of, again, the broader market. I'm kind of packaging this question: broader market, current state of the industry, and what sectors do you believe are going to be next in finding product market fit?
Great question, Noah. So crypto, I think, is on the cusp of a golden age. I think it's almost entirely structurally bullish factors, like ready to run across the board. I think the only negative thing, possibly, period, is the degree of animosity between today's American administration and crypto. Like, the Americans set the tone for the whole rest of the world, and it crypto should be a nonpartisan issue, but unfortunately, it's become a deeply partisan issue. And I think once we get to the stage where crypto gets treated more like the internet as an American opportunity instead of a political, kind of punching bag, I think that's really the last major thing I'm worried about. So yeah, I mean, crypto is just doing so wonderfully. Like, I think the L2 model is working great. Not everybody agrees with that yet. I think folks will come to see the growth and the value of the marketplace of diversity. Of, you can choose your own adventure when you make an L2. There's so many ways to choose your own adventure. It's not just tech stack. It's are you like in a particular industry or area of the world, or so like L2s are killing it. And other areas that I think are killing it are payments. I'm a payments developer. Uh, uh, Tokenization. Like, tokenization is not just DeFi or lending, and it's not just payments. It's also just like the concept of putting these assets on chain. On There's a meme that went around a while ago where someone said that like, oh, why would you use real world assets in on chain when you can get the same rate off chain and you have all this risk? Like what is the value of on chain? You can get rugged, they can steal your thing, you can have hacks. And it's like, no, okay. The value of on chain is that I can send you $100 million in Tesla shares from my phone in 5 minutes. Boop, and it just gets there. You're anywhere in the world. I can make an attestation that I have those Tesla shares and gain access to a Tesla shareholder meeting where I've anonymously proven I hold shares. There's going to be all these incredible sectors. And so I think on chain has product market fit holistically in a way that's underappreciated. It's just better than off chain. And so, yeah, in terms of specific sectors, definitely payments, definitely real world asset and tokenization. I think folks underappreciate by like 100x how big Immutable X is going to be. Immutable X is this gaming L2 that I suppose a lot of people don't think about. But if you look at the numbers they've published about how many funded AAA games, these are games that got their own funding from people who fund games. They raised like 5 million or 20 million or 100 million to build a AAA video game that's going to come out on like Steam or Xbox or PS5. And they're on Immutable. And these games take years to make. And so like a couple of years from now, the amount of on-chain games on Ethereum on Immutable is going to be like hundreds of millions of people playing them. There's the future is so bright right now, and I'm so bullish. I'm bullish about on-chain e-commerce, like what Shopify and Stripe have done off-chain. We're going to increasingly see parts of that, in some cases, all of it done on-chain. I think we're so much further ahead than a lot of people realize, and conditions are much more bullish than people realize. So I'm so excited for the future, not just the distant future, but like next month. Yeah.
Let's piggyback off of that. Then, do you think that the 4-year cycle that we've seen in the past is going to repeat, or do you think we're in for a longer journey of maybe not the same exuberant, frothy rise up in price, but more these smaller bull cycles with shorter kind of relatively bear periods and then back to bull cycles? I would love to know that, and then what your current portfolio looks like. How have you positioned yourself based on your thesis?
Yeah, I'm happy to share most of that. So I'm a payments builder because I like software and I like payments, but I'm primarily an investor. I make almost all my money off my investing. Right now, I'm almost 100%, like over 97% Ethereum outside of real estate. Cayman Islands, no capital gains. Sorry. I rotated out of Solana recently. Very successful rotation for me. I increased my Ether stack by some significant double-digit percentage. I made a lot of money on Solana this year and also in 21. But I see Ether as the reserve currency of my portfolio. Obviously I measure my wealth in dollars like everybody else, but I aspire to measure my wealth in like units of Ether, because I know like a certain amount is just going to get my family and I set up permanently. And so, I'm an Ether investor. My money's in Ether, and I think it is by far the best risk-adjusted return in the world right now, because people have no idea what's coming. The whole global economy is going to be on Ethereum over like the coming decades. It's going to be unbelievable, and it's going to take time to get there. And there's going to be a lot of FUD and challenges along the way. But Ethereum has a monopoly on doing something the world needs, which is making a better economic system to make people more money and allow them to have more businesses. So super bullish on that. In terms of the market cycle and kind of market structure,
Ryan, I want to interrupt you for a second. I want to not push back on that, but ask you this. A lot of people look at Ethereum or Bitcoin and they say, hey, I didn't get in at the same time as Ryan. I didn't get that exponential gain. And you have the thesis that Ethereum might one day be worth 50 grand a token. But a lot of other people come into the market. They say, "Hey, I only have 10 grand in my name, or 10 grand in my name, 100 grand in my name," and I am open to being risky. I'm open to maybe speculating on some of these dApps, some of these other tokens in order to accrue more Ethereum in this case. So that other 3% of your portfolio, I would love to know what that looks like. And also for someone with high risk tolerance that's okay with potentially losing a percentage of their liquid liquid net worth, what kind of advice would you give that person? Or rather, how have you positioned yourself? Because I don't want you to make yourself liable by giving any sort of investment advice.
Sure. Yeah. I'm not. Yeah. For me, the 3% that's not Ether is undisclosed Ethereum tokens. These are tokens on Ethereum. Be they apps or L2s or whatever. Not stablecoins. In terms of this phenomenon of people saying like, well, Ryan, Ethereum was your moon. It's not going to be mine. I mean, this phenomenon is endemic to crypto. When you go find your friend, you tell them you made a lot of money on the token. They never want to buy your token. They want to find the next one. And so, that helps explain why Solana's been so strong this year, because you have this core of people that were like, I'm going to get rich this cycle. I'm doing it. And they looked around and a lot of them picked Solana. And frankly, it was a pretty rational guess. Like the Solana fell to, I think, like just several percent of Ethereum's market cap. I don't know what the correct percentage is. I certainly think it's a lot less than it is today.
Got as low as $10, I think, during the bear market.
$8, so. $8 bucks.
There you go.
Touched $8.
It's a hell of a trade.
It's a hell of a trade. There's always going to be folks who want to try to find this 100x. And, to them, I would say, like, A, Godspeed. Everyone has a right to, like, see a vision for themselves and what they want to buy. B, do your homework. Like, don't get rugged. There's a difference between something that's risky because it might not work out and something where, like, even the people building it are trying to rug you. And then C, I would say, I know a lot of you are, younger than I am. I remember when I was in my early 20s, it was difficult to conceptualize of plans that were like longer than like about 6 or 9 months. Mm-hmm. If someone said something like, "Oh, next summer we will," I'm like, "Oh man, that's so long. Like, how can I even imagine that?" But now that I'm, in my 30s, I'm a crypto boomer. I'm in my late 30s, and it like I can say things like I published a post this morning. I was like, next February is when blobs should probably hit a competitive price instead of being free. And like next February is like a totally perceptual, like I know I'm going to get there. If I don't die young, time's going to tick on and February is going to arrive and we'll see if that prediction was right. Young folks have no sense of time. It's like the time's going to get there. So it's okay to bet on a big risky item, but just be sure you're not being impatient. Being impatient is one of the very best ways in the world to lose your money. Yep. So be willing to wait, because even though you can't imagine, you're 22 now, not you, but say you're watching this, you're 22, like, man, you're either dying young or you're going to be 25 someday. So maybe you can wait 3 years for that 100x. You don't got to try to pull it off by like Christmas. Like just have patience. And as it relates to that patience, I'm opening CoinGecko right now. We got some nice little bit of red across the board. Love to see it.
Yep.
And Ethereum right now, 286 billion. All right, now I'm going to open a tab. Nvidia, 2.63 trillion. Ethereum is 10 times smaller than Nvidia. Okay, so like Nvidia prints crazy amounts of cash and everyone in the world needs them for AI and yada, yada, yada. Okay, bottom line is it plausible Ethereum could be as big as the biggest corporations someday? Yes, absolutely, it's that plausible. Is it plausible it could be bigger? Well, if what we want to come to pass in terms of Ethereum being the dominant platform for a new economic system, like we went from writing everything down by fucking hand and having like actual armies of secretaries in like the 70s and 80s and for thousands of years. And then we went to like mainframes, and then we went to internet and PCs. Well, now we're going to on-chain. And if Ethereum is as big for the world as like the Windows PC was, or the mainframe, or the fucking Xerox, everybody should watch the advertisement where Xerox was introduced, the Super Bowl commercial. they like have like some monks in a temple. No disrespect intended to anyone. And the monks are like, it's a miracle because they like it was the first time you could copy a sheet of paper without writing it out yourself.
Wow.
Fucking crazy. And this on chain is a similar level of impact. And so, like, could Ethereum get twice as big as Nvidia is today? Yeah, it totally could. Okay, what token price is that? It's like about 50K a token. So
Wow.
yeah, like, you need to have patience and have some sense of risk. So like, look, I mean, if you're sitting at home right now and you have a couple thousand to your name, or 20 or 50,000, and you're like, man, I want to be rich. Like I want my millions. Like, look, you are gonna have to find a fucking 100x, and you're not gonna fucking find that in unleveraged spot ether. But are you gonna find the most reliable like 5 to 20x of your life over the next 5 to 10 years? Yeah. And for many of us who are like already rich, or like are wealthy, or who like have a good retirement account, like that return is going to be the difference between being middle class and being, rich, not like call the helicopter rich, but like, go where you want, own your time, own your house. And so like people underestimate just how big Ethereum could get, and how great a long-term bet it is, And so, I would almost say, like, if you know, it could be said that sustainable leverage trades on they say don't use leverage. I think I don't use leverage, except, like 1.1x here and there, including right now. And so, look, if you're at home right now and you're hungry, like, go find your 100x, but don't buy while prices are high. How can you tell if prices are high? Well, open the little chart, look at the little numbers. If they're like big numbers, don't buy. If the number went up a lot in the last 3 to 6 to 9 to 12 months, don't buy. Have your patience. Have your patience. And whatever team you invest in, make sure you do your homework on why they're there and what other serious people think of them. Like, you're a fucking, not you, like the metaphorical third party listener, like, you're a fucking moron. You don't know investing. You're not, just like I'm a moron. Like we all have to learn from others. And so, like, go see what other people are saying about these teams that you want to invest in. Why do they want your money? Right? They can get money from anywhere. If it's a public token, great, answers that question. But if you're getting some private investment opportunity, why are they giving it to you and not Sequoia, man? Like, keep your eyes open, and be patient, and know your risk tolerance. But not just your risk tolerance, know what you're spending your risk on. Like, what are you specifically betting on? Are you betting that a dex gets like bigger than all the other dexes? Probably a pretty shitty bet. Do you have any idea how many good dexes there are out there? A lot, amazing ones. Like, with like, they're still cooking new R&D. It's not just they're polishing it. They're still making totally new architectures. Don't bet on dexes unless you have a good reason why your dex is better. I will show a specific one that I do not own, and might buy in the future, not today, called Ikubo on Starknet. It's built by an ex Uniswap guy. They have like some pretty cool tech stuff. They're cooking. They have like that would be an example of a dex that, like, maybe you could 100x. Oh, and by the way, their token is like really, really, really low valuation right now, because they went like a non-predatory, fully diluted valuation, where like there's no locked tokens at all, except like the teams. I'd have to do the homework, but like, that's what you want to find. You want to find something that's low and earnest, and you understand what you're spending your risk on. Risk is a budget. You got to spend your risk the same way you spend your money at the grocery store. What is the risk? Is it tech risk, team risk, market risk, timing risk? There's different kinds of risk. So yeah, don't think that just because Ethereum's a big number that it's not good for you. I mean, it's still, like, there's no fucking doubt in my mind that if I continue to stay with Ethereum, which I can't imagine leaving this amazing community and generational asset, I'm going to make at bare minimum 10x by the end of the decade if I sell like whatever that top is. Obviously, steady state prices harder to look at, and so yeah, just be patient, and there's a lot of bad investments out there, and don't buy the top.
Fair enough. So this, what we're discussing here, the idea of the new investor looking at the market, saying I missed the boat on this, so I want to ape in on this or speculate on this. It ties into the term financial nihilism that was coined, or the first time I heard it was from Travis Kling, and it's this idea that because the wealth gap continues to increase, and because most, I'll use Americans as an example, feel like they're priced out of the American dream, they feel more and more like they have to gamble in order to get ahead or even catch up. And I think that Pump.fun has geniusly positioned themselves in a place where a lot of people are flooding into it and they're churning up new tokens, and most of these things rug. So I want to ask you if you think Pump.fun, something like this, is a net positive or net negative for the industry. And I also want to add that a lot of folks that I started with in late 2017, early 18, because they got so wrecked on ICOs and because they got scammed or lost everything due to this type of behavior, ended up just not returning to the industry. And they conflate crypto with scam, or Ethereum with scam, or Bitcoin with scam. So what are your thoughts on Pump.fun? And do you think this is something that helps us or hurts us?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's always sad when retail loses money and when you know they're going to lose money and you have to kind of watch that happen. And it's even worse for them where it's their money and, they, that being said, like, people have a right to use the apps they want to use with responsible disclosures and knowledge. And I wish Pump.fun had been built on Ethereum. It represents a product built on Solana that showed how they were aggressively trying to find apps that work, that like fit the timing. And so like Pump.fun, big win for Solana. Like, we should think of Solana as like a city, and in the city is a theme park, and that theme park is Pump.fun. And Pump.fun users, the price of admission to go into that theme park, how much is it collectively? Well, the Pump.fun team made 100 million, and the MEV rinsed from users from like not even their capital losses of like hot potatoing each other, just like that shaving every time they trade from like the bots scalping them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have numbers on that, but it's got to be at least a few hundred million more. And so, like, Pump.fun is like a theme park in the city of Solana where users paid 400 million to ride the ride, and I hope they had fun because it was sure fucking good for Solana. And like over 98% of them lost money, so it's like an entertainment expense, and hopefully not too many people got rinsed for large portions of their net worth because they have no idea the kind of structure and bots and industrial effort they're competing against under the hood. They have no idea. They have no edge at all. Unless, of course, they make a token that goes viral, which again was probably because they're like an influencer or something. So, like Pump.fun, great for Solana, terrible for Solana users.
Right.
And I still wish it was built on Ethereum.
Me too. Ryan, you stayed past the top of the hour, so I appreciate that. And I would love to do this again in the future. I appreciate your time as well. Last question, or I guess I would love to get closing statements from you, and I'd like to lead with this question. What does the future of mass adoption look like to you, and anything else you want to share with us?
Beautiful. So the future of mass adoption is, in the immediate term, it's important to realize that Coinbase is cooking so hard that even though they're not the future of Ethereum, because there's going to be lots of L2s as big as Coinbase with their own distribution, at the same time, Coinbase is really carrying the standard here. Like, they're going to take all the stuff on the Coinbase exchange and they're going to bring it on Base. And they're working on, like, I think they announced like the number 10 in major internal products of Coinbase stuff coming on chain. So Coinbase is a standard bearer right now. They're kind of like the pack leader, but that'll just be for now. I think not forever. So a lot of exciting growth coming out of Coinbase. Can't wait to see how they push forward everyone's expectations. The other half of that is a lot of exciting growth everywhere in Ethereum on all fronts. And it's the kind of thing that's going to seem really, really, really small and slow, or like kind of like unimportant, until there's going to be all these breakouts. And they're just going to start popping up like hot pockets that just flower everywhere. It's going to be nuts in the next few years because we've hit that curve. We've hit that S curve. And the last thing I'll say, I think, price is always on top of almost everybody's minds. And there's only three scenarios. Either there's never going to be a cycle again, or there will be a cycle again, like a big exuberant bull run cycle, uh, far in the future, like 3, 5, 8+ years, or there's going to be one soon. That's it. There's only three cases. Either there's no cycle, or it happens soon, or it happens far. And I feel very fucking certain that it's going to happen soon. I think there will be an exuberant bull run. I think we're really setting up for the structure. Bitcoin, for better or for worse, it's worse, is the leader right now. And their halving cycle dictates a lot of how this works because mining's so expensive. So we're going to see upward reflexivity in Bitcoin. We're going to see the ETFs participate. We're going to see all the new L2s and use cases. It's going to be fucking wild. So I think we're going to have a huge bull run, and probably my personal guess would be 12 to 24 months, with the top in 18 to 30 months. Yeah. Sounds like a long time if you're 18. Have patience.
Right. I've had that same experience. I was explaining to my girlfriend last night that 20 to 24 felt like an eternity, and 30 to 34, like, what even happened? I felt like I was 30 yesterday. Ryan Berckmans, I really appreciate your time. It's been a pleasure talking to you. And anytime you want to do this again, just reach out, man. Wish you all the best.
Thanks for having me on the show, man.